This is not financial advice, and I am not a financial advisor.
This is just me talking about my personal financial journey. This is for entertainment purposes only.
Enjoy the show!
Welcome to this deep dive into the core concepts from the alchemy of agency, building your army of dollars. Today we've got a really fascinating stack of source material to go through.
Yeah, we do.
And it tackles this super ambitious, but incredibly grounded mission. We're looking at uncovering the precise mindset and the actual mechanical steps required to permanently escape modern wage dependence.
Right, getting out of the trap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're going to examine the exact mathematical and psychological thresholds you need to cross to literally buy back your own freedom through strategic financial discipline. But before we get into the heavy mechanics of it all, I want you to imagine a feeling for a second.
Okay.
It's a feeling, unfortunately, a lot of us know all too well. It's that tight, just suffocating sensation in your chest when you realize you have absolutely zero options.
Yeah, the tightrope.
Right. You're living life on a tightrope. One bad week, like a busted transmission or, a surprise medical bill, a sudden layoff, and it spells total disaster. You are entirely at the mercy of circumstances that you just don't control.
It's terrifying.
It really is. Now, I want you to take that feeling and completely invert it. Imagine waking up, opening your laptop, and seeing $100,000 in highly liquid, compounding assets just staring back at you. The tightrope just vanishes. You are finally actually gripping the steering wheel of your own life.
And, the transition you're describing there, it goes way beyond just a changing number on a screen.
Well, for sure.
Moving from a state of total vulnerability to a baseline of absolute stability, it fundamentally alters the literal chemistry of how you walk through the world. It dictates how you breathe, how you communicate with people, and especially how you perceive risk.
Okay, let's unpack this, because looking through the source material, personal finance stops looking like this dry, boring math problem, and it starts feeling a lot more like an escape room.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right. And in any escape room, the very first crucial clue, the thing you have to understand before you can even begin looking for the key, is realizing that you actually have the agency to break out in the first place.
Yes. The sources call this initial realization the psychological pivot.
The psychological pivot.
Yeah, which basically involves drawing a massive uncrossable boundary between what you can control and what you absolutely cannot.
Because we waste an astonishing amount of cognitive energy agonizing over the uncontrollable side, don't we?
Oh, completely. We burn hours stressing about fluctuating job markets or shifting macroeconomic policies, inflation rates, or even just the overarching societal structures that kind of dictate the modern workplace.
Right.
But the psychological pivot requires you to radically redirect all of that wasted, anxious energy toward the very few variables that you actually dictate.
Like what?
Well, you control your savings rate, you control your asset allocation, and honestly, most importantly, you control your internal reaction to sudden financial shocks or personal setbacks.
The asset allocation piece really stands out to me there. Because we usually talk about allocations just in terms of, diversifying risk. But you're saying it's actually a mechanism for psychological control.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is how the mechanical directly feeds the mental. Asset allocation, so how you divide your money between volatile stocks, stable bonds, cash, whatever. It sounds like dry financial plumbing.
Yeah, sounds like spreadsheet stuff.
Exactly. But it is fundamentally a psychological tool. When you intentionally build a portfolio that matches your specific risk tolerance, you are pre-deciding your reaction to future chaos.
So you're planning for the panic.
Right. When the market inevitably drops 20%, you don't spiral into this panic about the global economy because your allocation was proactively designed to absorb that exact shock without ruining your timeline.
You've basically engineered your own peace of mind.
Yes, you become the architect of your own response.
I hear the strategic value in that, but I have to push back a little here on behalf of the listener. When the source material insists that individuals just need a, psychological pivot, it borders on sounding a bit harsh.
It can, yeah.
Like if someone is genuinely struggling to pay rent because the job market in their sector has just collapsed, telling them to just focus on what they can control could come across as really dismissive of legitimate systemic issues.
Right, and that nuance is critical, and it's where a lot of traditional, like, hyper-positive financial advice really fails.
Yeah.
The psychological pivot is absolutely not about ignoring harsh realities. It doesn't ask you to pretend the system is perfectly fair or, deny that the economic winds are blowing fiercely against you.
So what is it doing then?
It is entirely about strategic energy conservation.
Okay.
Think of it through the lens of sailing. You cannot control a storm. Screaming at the wind that it's acting unfairly won't move your boat an inch toward the shore, right?
It leaves you exhausted.
Exactly. The pivot is the conscious moment you stop yelling at the storm and direct every ounce of your physical and mental strength into adjusting your sails. It's choosing to focus on actionable survival variables because fighting uncontrollable elements is a luxury you literally cannot afford.
So the pivot isn't toxic positivity at all. It's ruthless pragmatism.
Yes, exactly.
You stop bleeding energy on the uncontrollable so you have enough strength left to physically manipulate the things you can.
Mm-hmm.
But converting that abstract mental shift into actual wealth-generating momentum, that requires a mechanical strategy.
Right, you need a system.
And the sources transition from this modern psychological framework directly into one of the oldest financial metaphors in existence, pulling from the classic book, The Richest Man in Babylon.
Oh, yeah. The mechanics of compounding interest haven't changed in thousands of years, and that century-old book just captures the blueprint perfectly.
It really does.
The core directive there is that you must view every single dollar you save as a worker. In the context of ancient Babylon, the metaphor used was that every saved coin is a worker or a slave bound to your service. And their sole purpose in life is to march out into the market every single day and earn coppers for you.
Which in modern terms is the interest, the dividends, the capital gain.
Yes, exactly. The book famously refers to those coppers as the children of your original workers.
I always love that imagery.
It's great, but it introduces the most critical failure point for most people.
Which is?
You cannot consume those coppers. If your initial workers go out and earn a small handful of coins, you cannot spend that interest on a new pair of shoes or a nicer dinner. Those children must immediately grow up, join the workforce alongside their parents, and start earning their own coppers.
It's basically like hiring a workforce of microscopic employees who work 24 hours a day, never sleep, never ask for a raise.
Never take PTO.
Right, and their only job description is to aggressively recruit more microscopic employees.
Modern financial philosophy updates this ancient metaphor brilliantly, actually. The sources heavily reference the Money Guy show, which frames this exact compounding process as building your army of dollar bills.
I love that. Viewing every dollar as a soldier completely recontextualizes our daily spending habits, doesn't it?
It has to.
Because when people fall victim to lifestyle creep-like, reflexively upgrading to a luxury apartment or leasing a brand new SUV just because they got a 5% raise at work,
right,
they are effectively committing friendly fire. You're cannibalizing the very troops you need to build your escape route.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, what's fascinating here is how lifestyle creep is the silent destroyer of future autonomy. You earn more, so you inflate your baseline standard of living to match the new income. You feel wealthier because you're driving a nicer car, but your actual net worth remains totally stagnant.
You're just spinning your wheels.
Right. In the context of your army of dollar bills, every time you needlessly upgrade a lifestyle expense, you are actively executing your own newly recruited soldiers before they even have a chance to hit the battlefield.
Wow.
You are slaughtering your own workforce to buy fleeting conveniences.
Which brings us to the actual enemy this army is being recruited to fight. Because according to the alchemy of agency, we aren't accumulating these soldiers just to eventually buy luxury goods or fly first class, right?
No, not at all.
This army's sole purpose is to wage war against the precarious trap of modern economic slavery.
And we need to define that term carefully because economic slavery in this context obviously doesn't mean literal physical chains.
Of course.
It refers to the suffocating modern reality of total unyielding dependence. It is the condition where an individual relies entirely on a biweekly paycheck just to survive.
Living paycheck to paycheck.
Exactly. It's a state of financial fragility where missing even 1 or 2 weeks of work equals instant structural collapse like eviction, defaulted loans, ruined credit.
It's the tightrope scenario we started the deep dive with.
Yes.
And when you live on that tightrope, the sources argue that it begins to warp your fundamental psychology, pushing you into what they call the soul of a slave.
Which is that terminology is meant to be jarring.
Yeah. It's intense. But what we're really talking about here is the underlying constant anxiety of living on a knife's edge.
Exactly. Having that mindset means your circumstances force you into a permanently reactive survival mode posture.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot speak up in a meeting when you see your company making an unethical or disastrous decision because you cannot risk being fired.
Right.
You can't leave a toxic manager. You can't take a calculated risk on a new, lower-paying career that might actually make you happier because you just cannot afford even a month-long gap in your cash flow.
You're stuck.
Your behavior, your location, and your daily indignities are dictated entirely by your desperate, immediate need for capital.
So you're trapped in the escape room,
Yeah.
but you don't even have the luxury of looking for the key because you're too busy frantically trying to keep the ceiling from caving in on your head.
That's exactly it.
Contrast that with what the text calls the soul of a free man. When you are no longer utterly dependent on next Friday's direct deposit, your entire interaction with the world shifts to a proactive, option-seeking mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have 2 years of living expenses compounding in the background, you can walk into a salary negotiation from a position of immense strength.
You have leverage.
You can walk away from bad deals, bad jobs, and bad geographic locations.
Because you are no longer reacting, you are directing. The entire point of the army of dollar bills is to buy your way out of that reactive state.
Right.
Every dollar invested is quite literally the purchase of your own autonomy.
So if true freedom means escaping that reactive survival mode, what is the actual price tag on that autonomy?
Ah, the numbers.
Yeah, because the sources don't just offer philosophy. They point to a very specific and notoriously intimidating mathematical threshold where this transition truly begins.
Big up.
They lean heavily on a famous principle from the late Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's longtime business partner.
Munger famously stated, "The first $100,000 is a bitch, but you gotta do it."
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Why is the first $100,000 universally recognized as such a grueling slog?
It really is.
And what mechanical shift happens once you actually cross that specific finish line?
Well, it is a slog because reaching that first $100,000 relies almost entirely on your own physical sweat equity. It is the product of brute force saving.
Right, your own labor.
Let's look at the timeline. If you start from zero and you manage to invest $10,000 a year, assuming average market returns, it might take you 7 to 8 years of strict discipline, budgeting, and sacrifice just to hit that $100K mark.
7 to 8 years of grinding.
Right. Because during those early years, your microscopic army is too small to offer much help.
Mm-hmm.
If you have $10,000 invested and the market returns a generous 10%, your army has only recruited $1,000.
Which is nice.
But it doesn't fundamentally change your life. Your own physical labor is doing 90% of the heavy lifting.
You are basically single-handedly pushing a massive boulder up a very, very steep hill.
But the mathematics of compounding create an incredible inflection point right around that $100,000 threshold.
What happened?
The gravity shifts. If you have $100,000 invested and the market returns that same 10%, your army just recruited $10,000 for you in a single year without you lifting a finger.
Oh, wow. Which means the army is now generating an amount equal to your original grueling yearly contribution.
Exactly.
The boulder has finally reached the crest of the hill, and it's starting to roll down the other side, picking up its own momentum.
Yes.
So the second $100,000 might only take 3 or 4 years. The third might take 2.
Exactly the point. The first $100K requires you to work for your money. Every $100,000 after that is driven increasingly by your money working for itself.
I mean, I see the mathematical beauty of that momentum.
Powerful.
It is. But looking at the exact steps the sources outline to get there, I noticed a very specific roadblock they throw in front of the listener.
Oh, the fortress.
Yeah. They insist that before you relentlessly deploy your army into the market to chase that $100K inflection point, you first have to build a cash fortress.
Mm-hmm.
A liquid asset buffer of about $10,000 to $20,000 sitting in a boring, low-yield, easily accessible savings account.
Yes, a highly liquid emergency reserve.
Right, but here's where it gets a bit confusing for me. At first, hoarding that much cash felt totally contradictory.
How so?
Well, if the first $100,000 is already a massive slog that relies on brute force savings, diverting 20 grand to sit idle in a savings account mathematically slows down your investing timeline, right?
That does.
But then, looking at the mechanics of the soul of a slave mindset we just discussed, I'm realizing this fortress isn't an investment vehicle at all.
No, it's not.
It's defensive infrastructure.
Exactly.
Because if you don't have that cash buffer, A sudden $8,000 medical bill means you have to liquidate your actual investment.
You'd be effectively slaughtering your own troops to pay for a leaky roof. And this raises an important question about living in reality versus living in a spreadsheet.
Yeah, spreadsheet math is easy.
Right. In a perfect mathematical vacuum, yes, you would invest every spare penny to reach $100 K faster. But reality is chaotic.
Very.
The cash fortress is the moat protecting your army. If you aggressively build a $40,000 investment portfolio but have zero cash savings, you are still financially fragile.
Because you have no buffer.
Right. When that inevitable $8,000 emergency hits, you are forced to sell your assets.
And if the market happens to be in a downturn that particular month, you are selling those assets at a massive loss.
You lock in the loss, you decimate the ranks of your compounding army, and you completely sever the momentum you spent years building.
That's painful to even think about.
You are forced to roll the boulder all the way back to the bottom of the hill. The cash fortress exists to absorb the shocks of real life so your investments can actually stay invested.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
Without it, you aren't building a compounding machine. You are just using your brokerage account as a highly volatile, highly risky checking account.
Right.
The fortress ensures your army is never called away from the battlefield of compounding to fight petty domestic skirmishes.
Wow. So what does this all mean for us? We've covered the psychological pivot to reclaim your agency, the deployment of your microscopic army, the battle against wage dependence, and the defensive moat required to actually reach that magical $100,000 threshold.
It means we have to completely reframe our definition of wealth. The ultimate takeaway from this entire philosophy is that investing is never about hitting an arbitrary finish line so you can finally buy a yacht or signal your status to the neighbors.
Right.
Wealth building is the systematic acquisition of your own future time.
I love that. You are quite literally buying your future self a Tuesday afternoon off.
Yeah.
You're buying your future self the space to recover from an illness without panic. You're buying the ability to look a toxic boss in the eye and hand in your resignation without wondering how you'll feed your family.
And once you establish that cash fortress and your army crosses that $100,000 threshold, you protect that momentum fiercely. You let the boulder roll. You push past 100K toward 250K, $500,000, and eventually ultimate financial autonomy. You transition permanently from the soul of a slave to the soul of a free person.
You find the clue, you pick the lock, and you walk out of the escape room into the open air. You are finally gripping the steering wheel of your own life.
That's the goal.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something to examine in your own daily routines that really builds on everything we've analyzed today.
Okay.
If every dollar you save buys a tiny, literal fraction of your future freedom, what part of your current lifestyle are you unknowingly trading your future time to maintain?
That's a tough question.
It is. Look at your recurring expenses and ask yourself, are the fleeting minor conveniences of today truly worth sacrificing the total unshakable autonomy of your tomorrow?
Wow.
The choice is entirely yours.